Follow moonlit romance library for fierce heroines, hard-won justice, and love that survives the dark. Chapter 1. A pot of black wheat ivy marrow carried the dead spring into the victory feast with both hands. The pot was ugly brown clay. The wheat inside it was worse. Every blade had risen green, curled at the tip, and turned black along the veins as if winter had burned it from within. Around her, the great hall of Ember Crown glittered with 1,200 candles, 6 roasted stags, and enough gold ribbon to bandage the whole kingdom. Lords toasted King Draven's fire. Ladies wore tiny jeweled dragons at their throats. Veterans struck cups against the tables whenever a singer reached the part where Draven had burned through the enemy's black iron walls and ended 7 years of war. No one sang about the snow that had fallen gray afterward. Ivy walked between the tables in a dark green gown still damp at the hem from the farmer's road. At 41, she had no patience for dresses that required assistance or opinions that required permission. Her chestnut hair, streaked once at the temple by a difficult winter rather than age, was braided beneath a plain bronze pin. Mud marked one sleeve. The palace guards had tried to stop her at 3 doors. 2 remembered that she had stitched their sons after the southern fever. The 3rd had been distracted when her clay pot leaked on his white boots. At the high table, Draven lifted a golden cup. He was beautiful in the way fire was beautiful from the other side of a river. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and dressed in red armor polished until it reflected the room, he looked exactly like the hero painted on every village wall. A crown of black dragon glass rested over his brow. Beside him sat Lady Seraphine Vale in a gown of hammered gold silk. Her honey-blonde hair fell in arranged waves, and her smile had been trained for balconies. She had designed the victory procession, the songs, the gold ribbons, and according to 3 newspapers, the king's future happiness. Ivy had once designed his field hospitals. Draven saw her when she reached the first stair. For half a breath, the king vanished from his face. He was only the man who had slept beside her maps, stolen the warm side of her bed, and promised that when the war ended they would plant pear trees at Gold Meadow. Then the hall noticed his silence, and the king returned. "Mistress Marrow," he said, "this is a closed celebration. So were the Western Wells. The poison got in anyway." The nearest tables went quiet. Ivy climbed the stairs. A guard moved toward her. Draven stopped him with 2 fingers, perhaps because he still knew she became most dangerous when someone ordered her not to finish a sentence. She set the pot in the center of his golden plate. Black wheat trembled between the candles. "Congratulations, Your Majesty," she said. "Your victory is eating this country." Someone dropped a spoon. Seraphine's smile did not break, but one perfect eyebrow rose. A dramatic centerpiece. "I wish you had consulted me." Black clashes with the ribbons. It also clashes with breakfast. A few veterans coughed into their cups. Draven looked at the wheat, then at Ivy. "You were removed from the Royal Agricultural Council." Wheat did not receive the notice. Enough. The word carried heat. Candle flames leaned away from him. Ivy's heart struck hard against her ribs. She had seen his dragon form tear a siege tower in half. She had also seen him cry over a 3-legged camp dog. The dangerous thing about loving a man who became a dragon was not forgetting his claws. It was remembering his tenderness and mistaking memory for evidence. "The first meltwater reached Gold Meadow 9 days ago," she said. 3 days later the roots blackened. Goats miscarried near Ash Run. A clean water bore abandoned 4 springs he has used for years. The gray fall from your last campaign carried black salt into our snow. General Mock, a thick-necked man whose mustache looked surprised to be attached to him, slapped the table. "Dragonfire leaves fertile ash. Every soldier knows it. Every soldier also knows ale improves singing. Neither fact survives measurement." Laughter escaped from the lower tables before fear swallowed it. Draven's jaw tightened. The royal alchemist has already prepared a cleansing treatment. Tomorrow the fields around the capital will be green. Paint a corpse and it remains inconveniently dead. "You came here because you cannot bear to see me move forward." That hurt more than she had prepared for. She looked at Seraphine. The younger woman sat very straight. A diamond dragon curled around her wrist, its ruby eyes bright in the candlelight. Ivy returned her gaze to Draven. "You are free to marry a trumpet if praise is what warms your bed. I came because children drink from wells downhill of your triumph." This time the laugh was larger. Even Seraphine's mouth twitched before she caught it. Draven rose. His cup bent beneath his hand. "Arrest her." 2 guards approached. Ivy allowed them to take her arms. She had made the wheat visible. That had been the first task. As they turned her, Draven descended one step. "You always believed being correct made you kind," he said softly. "No. I believed being honest gave us time. You preferred a woman who made time look festive." His face changed. For one foolish instant, grief moved through it. Then he caught her chin between his fingers, forcing her to look up. "Do not speak of my future queen that way." Ivy had endured exile from the council, farmers spitting at her gate because the palace called her alarmist, and the sight of another woman's portrait replacing hers in Draven's private rooms. His thumb pressed into the bruise beneath her jaw. She reached behind her, seized the nearest silver pitcher, and poured 3 pints of raspberry wine over his crowned head. The great hall inhaled as one creature. Red wine streamed down the king's face and into his heroic collar. Ivy handed the empty pitcher to General Mock. "Now the ribbons match," she said. Seraphine made a sound suspiciously like a choked laugh. Draven wiped wine from his eyes. "Take her to the military map room. Lock every door." As the guards dragged Ivy away, she saw the black wheat dripping onto his gold plate. For the first time that night, no one sang. Chapter 2. The boar introduces a man. The military map room had 6 doors, 9 windows, and one enormous relief model of the kingdom that made Ivy want to correct its rivers. The guards locked her inside and stationed themselves in the corridor. She stood alone beneath painted dragons and tried not to think about what came after public treason. Draven would not execute her. Probably. He disliked waste, and he still owned 3 shirts she had mended. She crossed to the relief map. Tiny green hills rose around blue glass rivers. Red stones marked the path of the final campaign. The army had burned the black iron wall at Harrow Pass, then moved north along the Whitewater Basin. The same basin fed Gold Meadow, Ash Run, the capital, and half the kingdom's wells. "You vain, magnificent fool," she whispered. Something crashed beyond the eastern door. A guard shouted. Another man cursed with considerable imagination. Wood splintered. The door burst inward. A red-haired boar thundered into the room with a strip of gold feast ribbon hanging from one tusk. He was the size of a pony, broad through the shoulders, with russet bristles, black clever eyes, and a pale crescent mark above his snout. Mud flew from his hooves. He skidded across the polished floor, struck the relief model, and sent 3 decorative mountains into the western sea. "Bristle!" Ivy shouted. He sneezed at the map as if it had been inaccurate on purpose. Ivy had met him 7 years earlier during the first dry summer of the war. She had been kneeling beside a spring in Briarwood, testing water after 6 soldiers fell ill. A wild red boar had emerged from the ferns, sniffed the pool, and refused to drink. When she tried to lure him with an apple, he had stared at her until she felt judged, walked half a mile uphill, and pawed open a hidden clean seep beneath an alder root. She followed him for 3 days. On the 4th, she discovered a broad red-haired man bathing naked in the seep with the same crescent mark above his nose. He had informed her with dignity that staring was rude. She had informed him that bathing upstream of a medical camp was ruder. Bristle was an earthborn wer-boar, older than several bridges and twice as stubborn. He shifted when he pleased, spoke when absolutely necessary, accepted no master, and refused all offered food. He did, however, steal unattended onions. Tonight he charged straight toward Ivy. "Stop," she ordered. He did not. A second figure came through the broken door behind him. A tall man in a black military coat, one shoulder armored, the other bound beneath a folded silver-gray wing harness. He moved quickly despite a stiff left side. "Do not let it reach the war table," he said. "He has already improved it." The man lunged for Bristle's trailing ribbon. Bristle turned, lowered his head, and drove his snout into the man's thigh. The stranger lost his balance. Ivy stepped forward to catch him at the exact moment Bristle bumped the backs of her knees. They went down together. The man twisted before they struck the floor, taking the impact on his good shoulder. Ivy landed across his chest, one hand braced beside his head and the other inside the open front of his coat. Warm skin, hard muscle. A scar ran beneath her palm toward the bandaging around his ribs. His face was inches from hers. He was younger than she expected a war commander to be, perhaps 32, with thick black hair, a straight nose, a firm mouth, and silver eyes that caught light like frost. A short dark beard sharpened, rather than hid his jaw. No court portrait had prepared her for the living force of him. He looked from her face to the boar. "Does it usually introduce men this way?" Ivy became aware that her knee was between his thighs. Only the ones who ignore doors. I used the door. Your associate removed it. Bristle grunted and began eating the corner of General Mock's campaign map. The stranger's hand rested at Ivy's waist. It was a practical place to hold someone who had fallen. It became less practical when neither of them moved. Commander Calder Rook, he said. Ivy knew the name. Everyone did. The Black Wolf of Harrow Pass. The winged warshifter who had led wounded soldiers through Dragonfire after his left flight wing was torn nearly away. Ballads described him as grim, silent, and uninterested in women. Ballads had neglected the warmth of his hand. Ivy Marrow, the woman who poured wine on the king. Agricultural physician, actually. The wine was volunteer work. His mouth shifted. Not quite a smile, but close enough to be dangerous. They rose as the guards crowded through the ruined doorway. Every man stopped when he recognized Calder. Commander, one said. The prisoner is under royal order. Calder picked a blackened wheat root from the front of Ivy's gown. He rubbed it between gloved fingers, smelled it, and went still. Black salt, he said. Ivy watched his face close. You know it. I know what it smells like after Dragonfire. He turned to the guards. Mistress Marrow is now assisting a military contamination inquiry. The king ordered her locked in. Then His Majesty will be pleased she remains in the room. Calder looked at the missing door. Technically. Bristle tore another piece from Mock's map. Your boar is eating a classified invasion route, Calder said. He has strong views on foreign policy. Bristle swallowed, walked to a washstand, sniffed the water, and overturned the basin without drinking. Calder's humor vanished. Ivy saw it happen. The commander looking at the black root, the rejected water, and the red campaign stones along the Whitewater Basin. He knew before she spoke. How much black salt did the army use at Harrow Pass? She asked. Calder stared at the glass river. Enough to end a war. Chapter 3. What the hero hid. Calder cleared the room with 3 quiet orders. The guards went. General Mock arrived, objected, and was sent away with half his map missing. Bristle settled under the central table on a stolen red marshal's cloak, having rejected a plate of palace apples with visible offense. He stole that from my quarters, Calder said. He does not accept gifts. Theft preserves his independence. Comforting distinction. Ivy spread 4 watershed charts across the table. Calder stood opposite her, his good hand planted near Whitewater. Close up, she could see the tension around his left shoulder and the silver brace disappearing beneath his coat. He had one functional gray-black wing folded tightly along his back. The damaged wing remained bound inside the harness. Black salt came from the Karth mines, he said. It made Dragonfire hot enough to soften iron. And when it burned, the mineral separated. Fine ash rose into the winter clouds, which traveled east. We believed the concentration would be low by the time it fell. Who is we? His silver eyes met hers. The Command Council. Who calculated the water risk? Silence answered first. Ivy straightened. You. My engineering corps. Under my signature. The room seemed to narrow around them. Did you know this would happen? I knew it could happen. Bristle lifted his head. Calder continued before Ivy could speak. I warned against black salt in river valleys. Draven refused. On the final week, our western line broke. 40,000 soldiers were trapped against the wall. The Command Council asked for my full projection. And I gave them the likely damage. I removed the worst case. Why? His jaw flexed. Because the worst case said spring contamination could reach every major well in the kingdom. The men had already heard rumors. If they believed victory would poison their own families, they would have broken ranks. The enemy would have slaughtered them before dawn. So you saved the army by letting their families drink the consequence. He accepted the blow without flinching. That angered her more than an excuse might have. Yes, he said. Ivy turned away because she wanted to strike him, and because part of her understood the impossible shape of that night. Understanding was not forgiveness. It was merely pain with more rooms. The king's cleansing treatment, she said. What is in it? Royal alchemist Pritch developed it. Lime milk, quicksilver salts, ground moonstone. Ivy seized a charcoal stick and wrote the ingredients beside the black salt formula. Her stomach dropped. It will work, she whispered. Calder came beside her. You sound unhappy about that. It will make the soil look clean. Lime releases the black mineral from clay. Moonstone binds it into water. The roots stop absorbing poison, so the blades turn green. And the poison? She drew a long black arrow beneath the soil line. Goes down. into the wells. Outside, victory bells began to ring midnight. Calder looked toward the palace windows. The treatment wagons left at dusk. How many? 200. Ivy gathered the charts. We stopped them. Draven will not recall them on our word. Then we need something he cannot turn into a jealous woman's complaint. Calder's gaze cooled at the phrase. Is that what he called you? Among other promotions. He is fortunate the war ended. I have more time for personal disappointments now. There it was, so dry she nearly missed it. Not a threat exactly, but a place where one could be stored. Ivy rolled the last map. I need access to the treated fields at dawn, the Army's black salt records, and every engineering map of the Whitewater Basin. Granted. You cannot grant the records without the king. Calder unfastened a heavy iron key ring from his belt and set it in her palm. His fingers closed hers around it. Mistress Marrow, the army has spent 7 years learning that I can grant almost anything if I look tired enough. His hand lingered one heartbeat. Why help me? She asked. Because you are right. That has never impressed anyone at this palace. It is not the only reason. His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth. Heat moved under her skin, startling and unwelcome, and not entirely unwelcome. Bristle rose, crossed the room, and used one tusk to push the keys more firmly into Ivy's hand. Then he returned to the cloak. Calder stared after him. Did Abor just approve our military alliance? Do not become vain. He may only want your cloak permanently. Cruel creature. He has excellent judgment. This time Calder smiled fully. It changed his severe face so completely that Ivy forgot, for one hazardous second, what they were trying to save. Chapter 4. Green fields, dead fish by sunrise. The fields east of Ember Crown were green. Crowds lined the road to see them. Yesterday the wheat had been mottled black. Today it stood bright beneath banners bearing Draven's golden dragon. Alchemist Pritch rode between the rows in a white carriage, bowing as if he had personally invented spring. Ivy arrived on a black army horse with Calder beside her and Bristle trotting behind. Bristle had retained the red marshal's cloak. It dragged through every puddle and made him look like a revolutionary carpet. Your dignity appears to be leaving the city, Ivy told Calder. It was expensive. He likes the lining. I also liked the lining. At the demonstration field, Draven stood on a raised platform with Seraphine and the Royal Council. His wine-stained armor had been replaced. His expression suggested that everyone else should also forget the wine. People of Ember Crown, he called, fear has been answered by action. The royal treatment has restored our land in a single night. Cheers rose. Ivy dismounted. Calder's hand closed around her waist to steady her. She did not require steadying. Her body did not object. Draven saw it. The king's eyes fixed on Calder's hand until the commander removed it with deliberate slowness. Interesting, Ivy thought. Annoying, but interesting. Alchemist Pritch held up a green stalk. He was a small, pink man with soft white hands and a chain of emerald bottles across his chest. The unfortunate discoloration was no more than a surface blight. My cleansing draught has neutralized it. Drink it, Ivy said. The crowd turned. Pritch blinked. What? If it is clean enough for our bread, it is clean enough for your cup. He laughed too loudly. Soil medicine is not table wine. Neither was last night's table wine, according to the king. Seraphine covered her mouth with 2 fingers. Draven did not. Ivy walked into the field and pulled up a fistful of wheat. The blades were green. The roots were pale and nearly clean. She held them up. The poison is gone from the roots. Pritch spread both hands. At last, she admits it. I admit you moved it. She crossed the road toward a stone well. A farmer named Nan Reed stood beside it with her 2 grandsons and a bucket of silver minnows used to test water for the dye houses. You asked me to keep them here, Nan said. Pour well water into the bucket. Pritch stepped down from the platform. This exhibition is unauthorized. Calder moved once, placing himself between Pritch and Ivy. He did not draw a weapon. He did not need one. Nan filled a cup from the well and tipped it into the minnow bucket. For a moment, nothing happened. The crowd murmured. Draven folded his arms. Then the first fish rolled onto its side. Another followed. Within seconds, every silver belly faced the sky. The cheering stopped. Nan's youngest grandson swayed beside the well. Tom, she said. The boy vomited onto the stones and collapsed. Ivy reached him first. His lips were pale, pulse rapid. How much did he drink? 1 cup, Nan cried. Only 1. Around the field, People began staring at their water flasks. Panic moved faster than cavalry. Ivy forced the boy's mouth open, gave him charcoal paste from her satchel, and ordered Calder to bring the vinegar salts. He knelt in the dirt without hesitation, holding the child upright while Ivy worked. Draven descended from the platform. Clear the road. Give her space. For one breath he sounded like the man she had loved, quick in crisis and free of performance. Then Seraphine whispered something to him. He looked at the watching crowd and raised his voice. This may be an isolated well. No one will draw conclusions until the royal alchemist completes his tests. Ivy looked up from the sick boy. The fish have completed theirs. Pritch tried to retreat toward his carriage. Bristle stepped into his path. The alchemist went left. Bristle went left. He went right. Bristle went right. Control that animal, Pritch snapped. The boar shifted. Bones rolled beneath red bristles. In their place stood a broad, naked man with rust-colored hair, a thick beard, and the pale crescent over his nose. The marshal's cloak settled around his shoulders just in time to preserve public order. The crowd gasped. Bristle looked at Pritch. Not animal. His voice was deep and rusty from disuse. He took the emerald bottle chain from Pritch's chest, sniffed it, and dropped it into the minnow bucket. The water around the bottles clouded black. Bad dirt medicine, he said. Then he became a boar again and sat on Pritch's boots. Pritch squealed. The crowd laughed, fear cracking just enough for thought to enter. Calder looked at Ivy over the child's head. Can the boy be saved? Yes. He drank little, and we caught it early. Then clutched Ivy's shoulder. What about everyone else? Ivy looked across the impossible green field. Beyond it stood the capital, every roof shining in the spring sun, every kitchen drawing water for morning bread. Close every treated well, she said. Now. Draven's face hardened. Closing the capital's wells will cause a riot. Leaving them open will cause funerals. You do not command this city. Calder rose beside her, one hand still stained with the child's charcoal medicine. Today, he said, she commands every soldier carrying a water key. Draven stared at his commander. Calder removed the black iron marshal's seal from his coat and placed it in Ivy's muddy hand. By emergency war law, he said, loud enough for the crowd, the Army Engineering Corps answers to the chief contamination physician until the water is secure. Ivy felt the weight of the seal. It was not a romantic gift. It was more intimate than one. Behind Draven, Seraphine's golden smile had disappeared. On the road, church bells began to ring the warning for poisoned water. Chapter 5. The Woman Who Hated Dragons. By noon, every public well in Ember Crown wore a red rope. By 1, the city had decided thirst was a conspiracy. People crowded the river stairs with pots, helmets, flower vases, and one silver baptism bowl whose priest insisted was being used for practical holiness. Calder's soldiers brought sealed water barrels from the northern hills. Seraphine sent palace servants to distribute cups, then ordered gold ribbons tied around each cart. Does ribbon improve water? Ivy asked when she saw them. Seraphine stood in the palace yard holding a list and refusing to look tired. No, it improves crowds. People queue more peacefully for something that appears intentional. Ivy disliked how sensible that was. The words poison emergency would be more honest. The words free clean water are more useful to a frightened mother. We may both be right, Mistress Marrow. Try not to suffer visibly. Before Ivy could answer, a mud-spattered rider galloped through the gate. Ash Run has seized an army treatment wagon, he called. The farmers are holding the dragon engineers. Calder emerged from the armory fastening his coat. Casualties? Not yet. A woman named Joanna Bell has a grain hook at Captain Vera's throat. Ivy knew Jo. Everyone who studied the western farms did. 46, widowed, broad-shouldered, famous for sweet corn cakes and language that could sour cream. Her daughter Lucy had died 6 days earlier after drinking snowmelt from a pasture ditch. The palace had called it spring fever. Ivy mounted before anyone invited her. Ash Run lay 2 hours west. Calder's black horse matched hers stride for stride. Bristle ran beside them in boar form, snout low, turning away from every stream they crossed. How long have you followed him? Calder asked. 7 years. Does he always know clean water? Earthborn senses. He says water remembers stone. He said 4 words this morning. A productive month for him. Calder's mouth tilted, then flattened as they crested the hill. Below, 200 farmers surrounded a treatment wagon beside a half-built earth dam. 6 dragon engineers stood with their hands raised. Their captain was a tall woman with deep brown skin, braided black hair, and copper scales along her temples. One folded bronze wing showed beneath her work cloak. Jo Bell held a grain hook beneath her chin. "Your fire killed my girl," Jo said. "Your medicine came to finish the rest." Captain Vera did not move. Blood ran from a stone cut above her eyebrow. "I built the Grey Dam to keep ash from the river. I did not make the treatment." "You wore the same uniform." "Yes." The simple answer checked Jo for half a heartbeat. Ivy dismounted outside the ring. "Jo." Jo's face twisted when she saw her. "You told the council the snow was wrong. They called you bitter. I believed them. So did half the kingdom. Lucy believed me." Grief made the hook shake. Ivy walked closer. Calder stayed one step behind. He could have disarmed Jo before she blinked. Ivy knew it from the stillness in him. He did not steal the choice from her. "I cannot ask you to forgive a dragon," Ivy said. "I cannot ask you to stop hating anyone today. I am asking you not to kill the engineer who can tell us where the poison was sent." Jo's eyes cut to Vera. "Can she?" Vera swallowed against the blade. "The army changed my dam orders after construction. I designed sealed holding banks. General Mock ordered drainage gates added beneath them." "Why?" Ivy asked. "To release collected ash into the ground after inspections. The dams were never meant to contain it. They were meant to hide it until the victory tour passed." Anger rippled through the farmers. Calder's face turned lethal. "Did you sign the alteration?" "I signed because Mock said refusal would disband my entire mixed-blood engineering company. I told myself gates could be sealed later." Vera looked at Jo. "I was a coward in a clean coat. Your daughter paid for it." Jo's mouth trembled. Then the earth beneath the treatment wagon groaned. Bristle screamed. It was not a pig's squeal but an earthborn warning, deep enough to shake birds from the hedges. Ivy saw water burst through a crack under the wagon. The half-built dam, weakened by the hidden drain, folded inward. "Run!" Vera shouted. Mud and black water struck the road. Farmers scattered. The wagon tipped, its green medicine barrels rolling downhill. One smashed against the dam and foamed like boiling moss. Vera shoved Jo clear of a falling timber. The beam caught Vera's bronze wing and drove her into the ditch. Jo landed safely on the bank. For 1 second she stared at the dragon woman pinned in poisoned water. Then she threw away the grain hook. "I have buried one stubborn girl this week," she snarled, wading back. "I will not bury another who has not learned sense." She caught Vera beneath the arms. Ivy and 2 farmers joined her. Together they dragged the engineer from the ditch while Calder shifted. His coat split along hidden seams. Black and silver fur swept over his body. A vast wolf rose where the man had stood, larger than any horse, one wing spreading dark and whole while the injured one remained bound in silver leather. He planted himself against the collapsing treatment wagon and held it long enough for the last workers to escape. The farmers fell silent. Jo looked up at the wolf who had fought beneath Draven's dragon banner. "Do not expect me to thank you," she said. Calder, unable to speak in full wolf form, bared enormous teeth. Ivy translated. "He says your manners are a national treasure." The wolf turned his silver eyes toward her. She had the distinct impression the translation was inaccurate. When the wagon finally crashed into the ditch, green foam erupted over Alchemist Pritch's local deputy, who had been hiding behind it. He emerged coated from hat to boots, slipped twice, and sat down in a manure pile with a noise like a disappointed trumpet. Even Jo laughed. It was only one broken sound, and she covered it with her hand as though laughter betrayed Lucy. Ivy touched her shoulder. "You are allowed." Jo looked at Vera, who was trying to stand with a torn wing and failing proudly. "Come to my house," Jo muttered. "Ye have been audacious. Do not drip dragon blood on my good rug." Vera leaned on her. "Which rug is the good one?" "The one you will be too unconscious to see if you keep talking." As they limped away together, Ivy saw the first shape of something stronger than forgiveness. Not peace. Not yet. A bridge built while both women were still angry. Chapter 6. The wolf beneath the well. The map hidden in Vera's coat showed 12 gray dams. All 12 had secret ground drains. Ivy spent the night at Jo's kitchen table marking poison wells in black charcoal. Jo brewed coffee strong enough to remove varnish. Vera lay on a bench while Ivy splinted her wing, objecting every few minutes that dragon bones healed better without fuss. "So do cabbages," Jo said. "No one asks them." Calder stood by the hearth in a borrowed shirt, because his own had not survived the shift. Joe's late husband had been shorter and much wider. The shirt strained across Calder's shoulders and ended above his wrists. Ivy tried not to notice. She failed with discipline. At dawn, Bristle pawed at the floorboards over Joe's old root cellar. "There is no water under my house," Joe said. Bristle pawed again. Vera pushed herself upright. "The old whitewater inspection tunnel runs near this farm. Mock's map says it was sealed." "Mock's map also says the western hills are 3 miles farther north," Ivy said. Bristle ate the corner, but I doubt he moved them. They opened the cellar. Behind shelves of turnips, Calder found a stone arch mortared shut. One blow from his good shoulder cracked it. A second opened darkness beyond. Cold air smelled of mineral water and metal. Ivy lit a lamp. "I am going down." "We are going down," Calder said. "Your wing brace is bent. Your sense of self-preservation is missing. We all travel imperfectly." Joe handed Ivy a rope. "If either of you starts flirting underground, remember I own the rope." Ivy nearly dropped the lamp. Calder accepted the coil with grave dignity. "Your hospitality is unusually specific. I was married 23 years. Nothing is unusual after year 9. The tunnel descended beneath the farm. Bristle led them, refusing puddles fed from the south and drinking only where clear water dripped from limestone. Ivy marked each direction. Calder followed close enough that his chest brushed her back whenever the passage narrowed. At the lowest chamber, they found the buried drain. Green treatment water poured through an iron grate and vanished into a deep natural well. "This feeds the village pumps," Ivy said. Calder's voice came rough behind her. "How long until it reaches them?" "It already has." Stone cracked overhead. The old tunnel had been weakened by the dam collapse. Ivy turned as the ceiling came down. Calder struck her from the side. They hit the floor behind a stone support. His body covered hers. A slab smashed across his back with a sound she felt through his ribs. The lamp went out. For several seconds there was only dust, darkness, and Calder's breath against her ear. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. You?" "I have been more comfortable." His good wing curved around them, a shelter of warm feathers and bone. Ivy touched his shoulder and found the brace twisted. Something wet soaked his shirt. "You are bleeding." An overrated detail. That is a soldier's way of saying yes while wasting syllables. She felt for the edge of the fallen slab. Too heavy. Bristle snorted somewhere beyond the rubble, then began digging with furious hooves. Calder shifted partly beneath her. "There is space to the left. Crawl when I lift." "With what arm?" "The attached one." He braced beneath the stone. Muscle tightened along his back. Ivy could feel pain trembling through him, though his voice remained level. The slab rose an inch. She crawled through, turned, and caught his wrist. Bristle broke open the far side at the same moment. Together they pulled Calder clear before the support collapsed. They emerged into Joe's cellar gray with dust. Vera took one look at Calder's brace. "That wing is displaced." "Thank you, Captain. I had mistaken the sensation for dancing." Joe pointed toward the pantry. "There is a table. Ivy keeps medical supplies there. I am taking Vera and the boar outside." "Why the boar?" Ivy asked. Joe looked between her and Calder. "Because unlike certain educated people, I recognize a closed door as a medical instrument." She herded everyone out. Ivy helped Calder remove the ruined shirt. Beneath it, linen wrapped his chest and left shoulder. Every inch of him was covered appropriately, but propriety did little against the sight of his back, the powerful line of his good shoulder, and the silver-black feathers emerging above the bandages. "Sit," she said. He sat on the table. Even then they were nearly eye to eye. Ivy cut away the outer wrap. The injury was old and terrible, a deep burn across the joint where the damaged wing joined his back. Fresh blood marked the edge. "Harrow Pass." Draven's final fire wave turned unexpectedly. Unexpectedly? He was trying to reach the wall. "I was carrying men out beneath it." Ivy's hands stilled. "He burned you. He ended the war. Those truths can stand in the same room." Calder looked at her. "You make crowded rooms. I was told being correct made me unkind. Being correct while someone bleeds can be annoying. It is not unkind." She cleaned the wound. His breath changed when her fingers pressed beneath the wing joint, but he did not move away. "This will hurt," she warned. "You poured wine on a dragon king. I assumed pain was part of the consultation." She reset the brace in one swift motion. His hand closed around her hip. Ivy froze between his knees. He was breathing hard now. His forehead nearly touched hers. One broad hand held her waist, the other gripped the table edge. "Better," she whispered. "Ask me in a less distracting position. You put me here. I was injured. My judgment suffered. And now?" His silver gaze moved over her face. "Worse." The answer settled low in her body. She tied the final bandage. Calder's thumb moved once against the curve of her waist, so lightly it might have been accidental if the man had not looked like he planned battles around smaller movements. "Ivy," he said. No one had made her name sound like both a request and a warning. She leaned closer. Outside, something heavy struck the pantry door. They both shut their eyes. Then Bristle's human voice came through the wood. "Pritch man running. Cordo sight." I had begun to admire his restraint. They ran outside in time to see the green-coated deputy fleeing across Joe's cabbage patch. Joe stretched out one foot. He tripped, rolled downhill, and vanished headfirst into the duck pond. "Medical emergency concluded," Joe said. Ivy looked at Calder. Dust silvered his dark hair. His borrowed shirt hung open over clean bandages. Heat still lived between them. "Later," he said quietly. It was not a question. To her own surprise, Ivy answered, "Yes." Chapter 7. The Fountain Turns Black. Seraphine's victory procession began the next morning. Ivy could not decide whether this was stupidity or strategy until she saw the crowds. People frightened by poisoned wells filled the Avenue of Kings because staying home meant listening to empty pipes. Seraphine had replaced the military songs with water instructions. Golden parade wagons carried sealed barrels. Performers handed out charcoal packets. Children wore ribbons printed with clean water only. "She turned a celebration into emergency distribution overnight," Vera said, her wings strapped beneath a blue work cloak. Joe scowled. "She also put her face on every barrel." "Both can be true," Ivy said. She was beginning to find that sentence irritatingly useful. At the center of the avenue stood the Victory Fountain, newly built in Draven's image. A marble dragon breathed 6 streams into a wide golden basin. Palace notices declared the water purified. Ivy had tested the feeder channel at dawn. It was not. Calder appeared beside her in formal black armor, his damaged wing braced and hidden beneath a half-cloak. "The king intends to drink from the fountain." "Of course he does. Pritch swears it is safe." Pritch also swore his deputy was inspecting cabbages. He inspected them rapidly. Draven and Seraphine climbed the fountain platform. Cheers rose, thinner than before. Seraphine addressed the crowd. "Ember Crown has endured fear, but fear will not rule us." She wore gold again, but there were shadows beneath her eyes. When she saw Ivy, her expression sharpened. "Mistress Marrow," she called. "Have you brought another centerpiece?" "Only the truth. It travels badly in carriages." Draven lifted a crystal cup toward the fountain. Ivy stepped onto the platform. Guards blocked her. Calder remained below, hands loose at his sides, waiting for her signal rather than making the scene his. "If you drink that," Ivy told Draven, "you may spend your wedding night discussing bowel cramps with Pritch." The crowd laughed. Even Draven's mouth betrayed him for half a second. Must every warning be delivered as an insult? No. The council ignored the written ones. Seraphine moved between them. Up close, she looked exhausted rather than golden. "You were right about the Eastern well. That does not make every cup poisoned." "No. This makes it poisoned." Ivy took a pouch of dried starwort from her sleeve. Pritch lunged forward. "That substance is forbidden in public water. Because it reveals metal salts. Because it stains stone. The marble will recover from embarrassment." Ivy emptied the starwort into the fountain. For one breath, gold water circled the basin. Then 6 dragon streams turned black. The color raced outward, dark as ink. The marble dragon appeared to vomit night. The crowd recoiled. Seraphine stared at the cup in Draven's hand. "You told me this source was untouched," she said to Pritch. A harmless reaction. Decorative herbs. She snatched the cup from Draven and flung its contents into Pritch's face. Black water ran down his cheeks. "That," she said, "was decorative." Ivy revised one opinion. Pritch stumbled backward into the fountain controls. 6 pressurized streams changed direction and struck Seraphine, Draven, General Mock, and Pritch at once. The king staggered beneath a black jet. Mock's ceremonial helmet filled and dropped over his eyes. Pritch spun in place, squeaking. Seraphine's gold gown became black from the waist down. For a stunned moment, no one moved. Then a child laughed. The avenue erupted. Ivy should not have enjoyed the sight of the four most powerful people in the kingdom dripping like blocked chimneys. She was only human. Seraphine wiped water from her face. Her elaborate honey-blonde waves hung straight around her shoulders. She looked at Ivy, and to Ivy's surprise, began to laugh too. It was not pretty balcony laughter. It was furious, exhausted, helpless laughter. 7 weeks, Seraphine said. I spent 7 weeks choosing the exact shade of gold for this fountain. Black is slimming, Ivy offered. Seraphine laughed harder. Draven did not. He seized Ivy's arm and pulled her behind the marble dragon, away from the crowd. You humiliated the crown. The crown climbed into a poisoned fountain by itself. You cannot keep doing this. Neither can the water. His grip tightened. Calder appeared on the platform without seeming to cross the distance. Release her, he said. Draven's dragon heat steamed the water on his armor. Remember whom you serve. At present, the person preventing mass poisoning. Ivy removed Draven's hand herself. Do not make me fetch more wine. She turned to the crowd. The fountain is closed. The northern carts are safe. Every district will receive a testing station before dusk. If a well turns starwort black, do not boil it. Boiling concentrates the poison. Bring the old, the sick, and children to the hill cisterns first. Clear instructions quieted panic better than gold ribbons or royal fire. People began repeating her words down the avenue. As Ivy stepped from the platform, Seraphine caught her sleeve. You could have warned me before ruining the fountain. I sent 3 reports. Pritch said they were romantic grievances. Did that sound likely? Seraphine glanced at Draven, who stood soaked and furious beneath his own stone likeness. At the time, she said, he made it sound very likely. Ivy studied her. And now? Seraphine looked at the black water. Now I think I may have mistaken a woman with mud on her hem for a woman beneath me. A common palace illness. Is there a treatment? It usually involves falling into something unpleasant. Seraphine looked down at her ruined gown. Then I am recovering beautifully. Chapter 8. The kings offered Draven summoned Ivy to the royal bathhouse at midnight. She considered refusing. Then his message said he had seized Pritch's private formula books, and duty dragged her where affection no longer could. Calder insisted on waiting outside. I can handle Draven, Ivy said. I know. Then why are you coming? His silver eyes lowered to her mouth with infuriating calm. Because knowing you can handle a dragon does not mean I enjoy leaving you alone with one. The answer warmed her all the way through the cold marble corridor. Draven waited beside the central bathing pool in a black robe, his dark hair still damp from the fountain. Servants had filled the water with green cleansing foam, perhaps because the palace possessed no sense of irony. On a table lay Pritch's books. Ivy reached for them. Draven covered the top volume with his hand. Hear me first. The wells are moving faster than your speeches. I was wrong to remove you from the council. She looked at him. An apology from Draven had once been rarer than snow in July. This one came without witnesses. That made it more real and less useful. You were right about the ash, he said. You were right about Pritch. Return to the council. Stand beside me when we announce the solution. What solution? We say the poisoning is contained to the capital basin. We distribute hill water and treat the sick. The spring tour continues. It is not contained. It must be. Ivy understood then. He was not asking her to solve the disaster. He was asking her to make the disaster fit the victory. You still think reality works for you, she said. I think kingdoms survive on belief. Our enemies are watching. If they see weakness, children are vomiting black water, and you are worried the neighbors will think your crown looks small. Fire brightened beneath his skin. I ended the war. Yes. And now we must survive how you ended it. He paced away, then turned. For a moment his anger fell, leaving a tired man in a dark robe. Come back to me, Ivy. The words struck the old, tender ruin in her chest. Seraphine? She understands statecraft. She will understand this. You intend to dismiss her as you dismissed me? I intend to correct a mistake. Ivy almost pitied him. He believed women were roads he could retrace when the chosen one became inconvenient. I am not the room you returned to after discovering the ballroom is cold. We were good together. We were at war. Crisis made your attention feel like devotion. Peace showed me the difference. His face tightened. Is this about Calder? This is about water. Your inability to imagine a woman thinking while an attractive man is nearby remains your own medical concern. Draven caught her wrist. You loved me. I did. Then stop punishing me. That was the final insult. The belief that consequences were something she had invented for him. Ivy stepped in, twisted her captured wrist the way camp nurses learned around drunken soldiers, and drove her knee hard into his thigh. The Dragon King stumbled. She hooked his ankle with hers and shoved. Draven fell backward into the bathing pool. Green foam exploded to the ceiling. He surfaced with bubbles on his crownless head and murder in his eyes. The bathhouse doors opened. Calder entered, took in Ivy's free wrist, Draven in the pool, and the formula books on the table. "Did I miss anything?" he asked. The king slipped on statecraft. Calder removed his gloves finger by finger. A dangerous surface. Draven surged toward the pool edge. Calder put one boot on the marble, where the king meant to climb out. "Move," Draven snarled. "You seized the chief physician during a contamination emergency. Under war law, that is interference with medical command." "I am the law." "No. You are wet." Ivy bit the inside of her cheek. Calder crouched, silver eyes level with Draven's. His voice remained quiet. "Touch her against her will again, and I will arrest you before your own bath attendants." "I would prefer not to. The paperwork would be repetitive." Draven looked past him to Ivy. "You would let him threaten me? I already handled you. He is adding minutes to the official record." She picked up Pritch's books. Outside the bathhouse, Calder fell into step beside her. "Your knee?" he asked. "Fine." His pride. Uncertain prognosis. They walked in silence until the corridor turned dark between lamps. Calder stopped. "When he asked if this was about me, you did not answer." Ivy looked up. "Were you listening at the door?" "Military hearing." "Jealousy, Commander?" "No." The answer came too quickly. She stepped closer. "That is disappointing." His good wing shifted behind him. "I have no claim on you. A claim and a feeling are different things." "I am aware." "Are you?" He backed her gently against the stone wall, one hand braced beside her head. He did not touch her anywhere else. The absence became its own kind of contact. "Ivy," he said, "I stood outside that door imagining 6 legal reasons to remove a king's hand from your wrist and 12 illegal ones. Do not mistake restraint for indifference." Her pulse climbed. "You forgot one thing." "What?" "I removed it first." Pride flashed warm in his eyes. That was the only part one enjoyed. She lifted one hand to his coat, feeling his heartbeat beneath the black cloth. Then a palace bell rang 3 sharp notes. Engineering emergency. Calder rested his forehead against hers for one frustrated breath. "Later," Ivy murmured. "You have said that once already. Then survive long enough to collect." Chapter 9. The map of the coming flood. Vera spread the full military water map across the council table at 2 in the morning. She had stolen it from General Mock's locked archive with Seraphine's key. "Borrowed," Seraphine corrected, still wearing a plain blue dress because her gold wardrobe was drying. "A theft requires an intention to keep the object. I intend to display it publicly and ruin several careers." Joe, who had arrived with 3 farmers and a basket of corn cakes, nodded approval. "I am starting to like her. It is upsetting." "The feeling is mutual," Seraphine said. "Your coffee damaged a silver spoon." "Weak spoon." Ivy leaned over the map. Black channels marked groundwater beneath the whitewater basin. 12 gray dams sat above them. Green lines showed where treatment wagons had spread Pritch's solution. Blue arrows showed the spring flood. All of them converged beneath Gold Meadow. Ivy's family valley. "The mountain thaw is early," Vera said. 3 days of warm rain have filled North Lake. When the flood reaches the gray dams, it will flush every buried deposit into whitewater. "How long?" Calder asked. 5 days. 6 if the northern temperature falls. It will not. Seraphine stared at the blue arrows branching from whitewater to the kingdom's eastern cities. "How many wells?" Ivy counted the districts in her head. "Most of them." Joe stopped chewing. Vera unrolled a second sheet. "There is one containment route. The old Saltmarsh Channel. It began west of Gold Meadow and ended in a vast abandoned marsh where nothing grew. The channel had been blocked 30 years ago to create the fertile valley Ivy's mother had planted. "Open the old gray levee," Vera said. "Move the flood through Gold Meadow. The valley's clay bowl will catch the heaviest sediment. The remaining toxic water enters Saltmarsh, where we seal it with lime and dragon glass." No one spoke. Ivy saw her mother's pear trees. The farmhouse porch. 40 tenant cottages. The hill where she had buried her father. Seed grain selected over 3 generations. If the poison flood crossed that land, Gold Meadow would not grow food again in her lifetime. Other routes? She asked. Vera shook her head. North sends it through 3 villages. South sends it directly under Ember Crown. Holding the dams means they burst unpredictably. Who can order the levee opened? Seraphine asked. Calder looked at Ivy. She knew the old law. Gold Meadow was freehold land, not royal land. Only its owner could surrender it to a public flood channel. I can, she said. Joe whispered, Oh, Ivy. Calder's face had gone still in the way it did when pain was too large for movement. Ivy traced the flood line with one finger. Why was this not in the command council projection? Vera looked at Calder. The room changed. He did not evade her. It was. Ivy lifted her head. The worst-case report I removed, he said. This was the final page. She had thought she understood his guilt. She had not understood that it had her orchard drawn inside it. You knew Gold Meadow was the barrier. I knew it might become one. You watched me spend 4 years restoring that valley after the army stripped it. Yes. You let me believe the danger began this spring. I did not know the ash concentration until you brought the wheat. But you knew where the bill would be sent. Calder came around the table. Ivy stepped back. He stopped instantly. That restraint hurt too. I chose 40,000 soldiers, he said. I told myself a possible future loss could not outweigh men dying in front of me. Every day since, I have told myself I would have made another choice if I knew. I do not know whether that is true. Do you want praise for honesty now? No. Forgiveness? His voice lowered. Yes. But I have not earned it. Ivy's eyes burned. She would not cry over Gold Meadow while it was still green. She gathered the map. I need air. Calder did not follow. Outside the council chamber, dawn paled the palace windows. Ivy walked until she reached the courtyard where the victory ribbons had begun to sag in the rain. Bristle stood beneath an arch in human form, wrapped in the stolen red cloak. He held 2 onions. Did you steal those? She asked. Found. In the kitchen? Kitchen found them first. Ivy laughed despite herself, and the laugh broke into one hard sob. Bristle said nothing. He offered her an onion. She took it because grief accepted strange gifts. They want Gold Meadow, she said. He sniffed the rain. Water wants low ground. Men want clean hands. And what do you want? Living springs. Even if my valley dies? His black eyes held hers. Valley sleeps. People di. Not same. It was the most he had ever said to her. Ivy looked toward the west, though palace walls hid the fields. Data had always been merciful. Numbers told her what was happening and allowed her to demand that someone else decide. This time the decision had her name on it. Behind her, the council doors opened. She expected Calder. Instead, Draven crossed the courtyard with General Mock. I have seen the map, the king said. Gold Meadow will not be flooded. Hope leapt before Ivy could stop it. Then Draven added, It supplies the grain for the summer coronation tour. The army will hold the Grey Dams. They cannot hold. Mock assures me they can. Mock's mustache lifted importantly. With enough men. Bristle bit into an onion. Ivy looked from the general to the king. You are gambling every well in the kingdom to save parade bread. Draven stepped closer. I am saving your home. No. You are trying to make me owe you. Must you make every kindness ugly? A kindness that poisons strangers is only vanity wearing perfume. Mock reached for the map in her hand. Bristle shifted into a boar and struck him behind both knees. The general sat hard in a rain barrel. The map remained dry. Draven closed his eyes. That creature will be removed from the palace. Bristle drank from the rain barrel beside Mock, decided the water was clean, and drank noisily around the general's boots. Ivy held the flood map against her heart. No, she said, but perhaps the king will be. Chapter 10. A commander without a seal at noon. Calder called the city to Judgment Square. He did not tell Ivy first. She learned when Joe dragged her from the water station and pointed toward the bell tower, where every public speaking platform had been turned to face the square. Soldiers filled the edges, but none carried drawn weapons. Farmers, merchants, nurses, and thirsty families crowded the stones. Calder stood alone on the platform in his black uniform. Draven was not beside him. Neither was the command council. People of Ember Crown, Calder began. His voice carried without a herald. The poison in our wells did not begin with alchemist Pritch's treatment. It began with a military decision at Harrow Pass. The square quieted. Ivy stopped at its edge. Calder held up a folded report. I wrote the final risk projection. I warned that black salt could contaminate the Whitewater Basin. On the last night of the war, I removed the worst outcome before the report reached the army. I believed the truth would break our line and kill 40,000 soldiers. I chose the danger I could see over the families I could not. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Someone shouted, "My husband was at Harrow Pass." Another voice answered, "My son drank from East Well." Calder did not defend himself against either. King Draven ordered the fire, he said. General Mock altered the holding dams. Alchemist Pritch hid the ash with treatment. Those facts do not remove mine. He unfastened the black iron marshal's seal. For 7 years, that seal had moved armies. He placed it on the platform rail. I surrender command to the contamination physician until the water is secure. Every engineer, wagon, dragon, wolf, and earth mover under my authority now answers to Ivy Marrow. I will serve whatever plan she signs, including one that condemns me. The crowd turned toward Ivy. She wanted to be furious that he had put her in their sight. She understood why he had done it. Trust could not be passed privately, while blame remained public. Draven pushed through the soldiers, red cloaks snapping behind him. This assembly is dismissed. Commander Rook, take back your seal. Calder faced him. No. The single word rang louder than the bell. Dragon heat rippled around Draven. You swore blood service to the crown. I swore to defend the kingdom. Today, those are not the same task. The crowd reacted like a field under wind. Draven saw Ivy. You planned this. I was testing water. Some of us have continued working during your tragedy. He stepped onto the platform and seized the marshal's seal. Bristle, concealed beneath the steps in boar form, thrust his snout between the boards. The platform jumped. Draven lost the seal. It flew in a neat black arc and landed in Ivy's water bucket. The crowd laughed. Draven looked down through the boards. Bristle looked up. Boar, the king said with dreadful calm, I have eaten your kind at winter feasts. Bristle sneezed on his boots. Ivy retrieved the seal from the bucket. Water ran over her hand. Calder descended and stopped before her. The engineering corps is yours. You cannot buy forgiveness with an army. I know. You cannot make me choose Goldmeadow because you confessed. I know. Stop agreeing. It is extremely irritating. For the first time that day, warmth touched his eyes. I know. She nearly struck him with the seal. Instead she asked, will your soldiers obey me? Calder looked back at the ranks. Ask them. Ivy climbed onto the platform. She held up the flood map, not the seal. In 5 days, mountain water will break the gray dams, she said. If we do nothing, poison enters nearly every well east of Whitewater. We can divert it through Goldmeadow into Salt Marsh. The valley will be lost. The kingdom will drink. The words came harder in public. Goldmeadow is my land, she continued. Its law requires my signature. I have not yet given it. Before I do, every family in the valley must be moved, every seed vault emptied, every grave recorded, and every animal driven north. I will not sacrifice people because powerful men already sacrificed enough without asking. Jo climbed onto the platform beside her. My farm is in the lower valley, she told the crowd. My Lucy is buried there. I will move her marker myself. Open the road. Vera joined them, her injured bronze wing bound tight. My engineers will cut the channel. Seraphine appeared in plain clothes with a stack of palace supply lists. The victory wagons can move 8,000 people in 2 days if we remove the decorative dragons. Jo eyed the lists. Remove them. Seraphine sighed. I knew you would say that. One by one, soldiers knelt. Not to Calder. To the work. Chapter 11. No More Golden lies the first orphan collapsed before sunset. St. Ara's home had been drawing from a private well behind the laundry. Because it did not appear on the city map, no red rope had closed it. 23 children drank breakfast porridge made with poisoned water. Ivy arrived to a hallway full of crying. Small bodies lay on blankets. Nurses moved between them with charcoal, vinegar salts, and clean water. Ivy knelt beside a girl whose golden victory ribbon had been used to tie back her hair while she vomited into a basin. Seraphine stood in the doorway. Her face went white. Why are they still wearing those? She asked. The matron looked up. The palace sent them yesterday. The children thought the king's dragon would keep them safe. Seraphine touched the ribbon at the girl's hair. Ivy expected her to retreat. Palace people often mistook witnessing pain for helping with it. Instead, Seraphine rolled up her sleeves. Tell me what to do. For 6 hours she carried basins, washed bedding, and held children who were afraid of the medicine. Her gold-painted nails broke. A boy vomited on her shoes. She removed the shoes and kept working barefoot. Near midnight, the smallest child stopped breathing. Ivy worked over him while the room held still. She pressed his chest, cleared his mouth, and breathed for him until his lungs remembered. When he cried, Seraphine sank against the wall. I told them to wear the ribbons, she whispered. Ivy washed her hands. The ribbon did not poison him. It told his matron everything was under control. So did I. You believed the king's reports. I wrote the reports. There it was. Seraphine looked older without stage light, though she could not have been more than 35. After the war, men came home missing limbs. Villages had no roofs. Draven woke screaming and burned holes in his sheets. The council said the kingdom needed a perfect victory, or it would split apart. I knew how to make crowds believe. I thought belief would give us time to rebuild. Then belief became easier than rebuilding. Yes, and I became very good at making every woman who questioned him look jealous, hysterical, or plain. Ivy sat beside her. You were especially inventive with plain. Seraphine winced. The pamphlet about your boots was beneath me. It said they resembled 2 widowed turnips. That line was Pritch's. I knew he was dangerous. Seraphine laughed weakly, then covered her face. I am sorry. Ivy did not say it was all right. It was not. She gave Seraphine a clean cloth. Be useful longer than you were cruel, she said. We will see what the balance says. Seraphine lowered her hands. That is a terrible forgiveness speech. It is not one. Good. I would distrust you if it were easy. At dawn, Seraphine climbed onto her own golden wedding wagon in the palace square. She carried an axe. Crowds watched as she chopped down the carved dragon archment for her bridal procession. Vera's engineers removed the gilded seats. Joe's farmers loaded water casks in their place. Draven came down the palace steps. What are you doing? Seraphine struck the arch again. Gold would split, ending our engagement. The crowd gasped. This is not the time for theater, Draven said. She planted the axe in the wagon rail. You taught me there was always time for theater. I am finally choosing a useful production. She held up copies of the king's sealed orders to keep the spring tour moving after the poisoned wells were known. These go to every town crier, she said. No more golden lies. Draven reached for the papers. Joe drove the water wagon between them. The carved dragon head, loosened by Seraphine's axe, fell from the arch and landed over Draven's shoulders like a ridiculous wooden helmet. His head emerged through the dragon's open mouth. The square went silent. Joe looked him over. Improvement. Seraphine climbed onto the driver's bench beside her. Gold Meadow, she ordered. Joe snapped the reins. I am still deciding whether I like you. Please decide slowly. I perform badly under emotional pressure. The wagon rolled west carrying clean water, empty seats, and 2 women who had every reason to despise one another. Ivy watched it go and loved them both a little. Chapter 12. The valley she chose to lose Gold Meadow smelled of pear blossoms and rain. Ivy stood beneath her mother's oldest tree, while 8,000 people packed their lives into carts. The valley moved around her in clear tasks. Seed sacks loaded, goats counted, doors marked empty, graves mapped, medicine chests tied shut. No one asked whether the flood was coming anymore. They asked how much they could carry. Joe organized the lower farms with the authority of a field general and the vocabulary of a dock worker. Vera directed engineers along the old gray levee. Seraphine turned every decorative wagon in the victory train into transport for children, elders, and chickens. The chickens disliked gold upholstery and expressed this democratically. Alchemist Pritch arrived under guard to identify stored chemicals. He stepped into a wagon, sat on a gilded cushion, and discovered that 12 chickens had occupied it first. His scream briefly improved morale. Ivy entered her farmhouse for the last time. The kitchen table still bore knife marks from her childhood. Dried rosemary hung above the hearth. On the mantel stood a clay pear her mother had shaped with clumsy hands during her final illness. Ivy put it in her satchel. Behind her, floorboards creaked. Calder stopped in the doorway. He had worked for 30 hours without removing his coat. Mud covered his boots to the knee. The marshal's seal remained with Ivy. The north road is clear, he said. All Bedouin residents are out. Vera needs your approval on the second charge line. In a minute. He waited. That was what finally broke her. Not comfort offered too soon, but his willingness to stand in the house she was losing and let it matter. My mother planted every pear tree, Ivy said. People told her the soil was too wet. She dug drainage by hand. Calder looked through the window at white blossoms moving in the wind. She was stubborn. You would have liked her. Would she have liked me? Not for several years. A generous woman. Ivy laughed, and tears came with it. Calder crossed the room slowly enough to let her refuse. When she did not, he drew her against him. His embrace was careful around the satchel and fierce everywhere else. Ivy pressed her face to his chest and allowed herself 1 minute of being held. I am still angry with you, she said. You should be. I may be angry for a long time. I have survived winter campaigns. This will be less organized. I assumed. She leaned back. Do you regret telling me? No. I regret giving you reason to need the truth from anyone else. There was no plea in his face. No demand that honesty erase harm. Ivy touched the scar at the edge of his collar. And what do you want from me? His hand tightened at her waist. Everything I have no right to ask for. That is not an answer. Your trust. Your temper. Your muddy boots beside mine. The sound you make when you are trying not to laugh at a councilman. A locked door and enough time to collect 2 postponed promises. Heat rose through her grief. Very specific. Yo encouraged specificity. Ivy kissed him. It was not gentle. Nothing in her felt gentle. Not the valley, not the flood, not the weeks of wanting him while hating what he had hidden. Calder made one rough sound and lifted her onto the edge of the kitchen table. His mouth answered hers with disciplined hunger losing discipline by degrees. His good wing opened around them, shutting out the white window light. Ivy's hands moved into his dark hair. His palms slid from her waist to the small of her back, drawing her closer until no uncertainty fit between them. The pantry door shifted. Calder froze. Ivy stared over his shoulder. Bristle stood in the hall and bore form. For one terrible second, she expected him to charge. Instead he reached back with one hind hoof, pushed the farmhouse door closed, and sat outside it facing away. Calder looked at the door. I forgive the cloak. Ivy kissed him again. They did not have enough time for every promise. They had enough for one long kiss, one whispered later, and the knowledge that later was no longer an evasion. At sunset, Ivy climbed the levee with the legal order in her hand. The entire valley waited beyond the boundary stones. She read the names of every farm being surrendered. She read the names of the 2 cemeteries, the school, the mill, and her mother's orchard. Then she signed. The pen did not shake until the final letter. Vera pressed her bronze engineer's seal beneath it. Joe placed Lucy's grave marker on the last wagon. Seraphine lowered every gold victory banner. Calder handed Ivy the first torch. Tomorrow, he said, we open the valley. Thunder answered from the mountains. The flood was coming early. Chapter 13. The king blocks the levee. North Lake broke before dawn. The warning horn sounded while the valley sky was still black. Water roared through the upper gorge, hours ahead of Vera's calculation. Engineers ran to the charges. Farmers drove the final livestock toward high ground. Ivy rode along the levee with the marshal's seal against her chest and rain cutting her face. Then red dragon banners appeared on the eastern road. Draven had brought the royal guard. 300 armored soldiers formed a line across the levee. General Mock rode at their head, mustache protected by a tiny silver rain shield attached to his helmet. Behind him stood Pritch and 6 green treatment wagons. Joe stared. His mustache has a roof. Focus, Vera said. I am focused on why we lost a war for 7 years while funding that. Draven rode forward in red armor. By royal order, the demolition is cancelled. Ivy urged her horse between the armies. Calder moved beside her, unarmed. The flood reaches the Grey Dams in less than 2 hours, Ivy said. Pritch will reinforce them with binding foam. Behind the king, 1 treatment barrel leaked green bubbles onto the road. His foam dissolves in floodwater. Pritch lifted his chin. A malicious simplification. It becomes somewhat less firm. It becomes soup. Structured soup. Even Mock looked at him. Draven dismounted. Rain ran from his dark hair. I will not let you destroy your home because Calder frightened you with his guilt. I signed the order. Under pressure. The pressure is a mountain lake. He lowered his voice. When this panic ends, you will see I protected you. Ivy felt something inside her become calm. Draven did love her, in the way a king loved a country on a map, beautifully, possessively, and without asking the people living there what they needed. You never protected me, she said. You protected the version of yourself reflected in my eyes. When I stopped admiring you, you found a brighter mirror. His face went pale beneath the rain. I am offering you everything. You are offering me my own land in exchange for everyone else's water. I am your king. Not in this decision. She held up the signed flood order and Calder's martial seal. Draven snatched for it. Calder caught his wrist. The air ignited. Draven's human shape expanded into red scales and wings. Calder shifted at the same instant, black-silver wolf rising through torn rain seams. One great wing spread over Ivy. Soldiers reached for weapons. Calder's wolf roar shook the levee. Then he stepped back. He returned to human form, rain streaming over bandaged shoulders beneath his split uniform. No civil war, he told his soldiers. Put down your weapons. Protect the evacuees. One by one, the engineering corps laid spears in the mud. Draven laughed in disbelief. You surrender? No, Calder said. I refuse to kill frightened men, so you can call yourself betrayed. The choice spread. Royal guards looked at the rising water beyond the gorge, then at families climbing the northern road. The first guard lowered his sword. Mock struck him across the face. Coward! Joe drove a seed wagon straight into Mock's horse. The horse, wiser than its rider, stepped aside. Mock did not. The wagon's padded grain arm caught him around the waist and lifted him neatly from the saddle. He landed in the chicken manure cart behind Joe. His mustache roof remained perfectly in place. Worth every tax coin, Joe said. Royal soldiers began laughing. Then they began moving families instead of blocking them. Draven, still half-shifted, reached for Ivy again. Bristle came out of the rain like a red boulder. He struck the Dragon King behind the knees. Draven slid down the levee, through green binding foam, and into a broad mud basin. His wings opened too late. Mud covered him from crown to tail. Bristle stood above the basin and grunted. Not animal, he reminded him. Vera climbed onto the charge platform. The first blast line is underwater. We cannot open the planned channel. Ivy looked toward the gorge. Black floodwater had reached the upper stones. The plan had failed before it began. Chapter 14. The river beneath the orchard panic broke along the levee. Vera shouted calculations to her engineers. The drowned charge line could not ignite. The second line would crack the levee but send water through North Village, where the last evacuation wagons were still climbing. There must be another outlet, Ivy said. Not on the map, Vera answered. Bristle lifted his muddy snout. He ignored the flood, turned toward the pear orchard and ran. Follow him, Ivy shouted. She and Calder raced after him between white-blossomed rows. Water began spilling over the far bank. Bristle stopped at the oldest tree, pawed once, then shifted into human form. River below, he said. Ivy remembered her mother's stories. Before the levee, Gold Meadow had been a marsh cut by many streams. One old channel had vanished beneath the orchard. The root cellar, she said. They reached the farmhouse as floodwater entered the yard. Beneath the pantry, Ivy found the stone drain her mother had sealed 30 years earlier. It was wide enough to carry a river toward Saltmarsh. Vera arrived breathless. She studied the angle. If we blast here and at the lower orchard wall, the old channel will take the first surge. North Village stays dry. What happens to the farmhouse? Calder asked. Vera looked at Ivy. It goes first, Ivy said. There was no time to mourn twice. Engineers placed dragonglass charges in the cellar. Seraphine arrived with the last victory wagon and began unloading lime sacks. Joe brought every farmer strong enough to carry one. Above the orchard, Draven climbed from the mud basin and roared orders no one obeyed. Pritch tried to flee in a treatment wagon. Seraphine stepped into its path holding the axe from her wedding carriage. Where are you going? To secure my laboratory. The kingdom is flooding. Sensitive instruments dislike water. So do children. She cut the wagon harness. The horses trotted free. The wagon rolled backward down the wet slope. Pritch jumped, caught his robe on a hook, and swung into one of his own open barrels. Green foam swallowed him to the neck. My formula, he shrieked. The barrel tipped into a shallow irrigation pond and bobbed there, leaving him coated, floating, and entirely unable to escape. Structured soup, Seraphine called. At the levee, General Mock's deputy tried to burn Vera's maps. Joe slapped the torch from his hand with a wet seed sack. The deputy stepped backward onto a water wheel. It turned, lifted him over the bank, and dropped him into the same manure cart as Mock. Occupied, Mock complained. Move your roof, the deputy said. Vera confronted the command officer who had forged her damn alterations, General Orsic. He drew a sword. You sign the gates, he said. You fall with me. I signed in fear, Vera answered. Today I am correcting the work. She hooked an engineering lift cable around his armor and struck the release. A counterweight dropped. Orsic rose 20 feet into the air and stopped upside down from the levee flagpole, his cloak hanging over his face. Put me down. Vera checked the knot. After inspection, Ivy reached the cellar with the final ignition cord. Calder caught her arm. Once you light it, we have 40 seconds. The floor may collapse sooner. Then do not be slow. Ivy. She looked at him. His face held everything there was no time to say. Do not rescue me before I finish, she said. The lower fuse must catch. I will give you 30 seconds. 35. 32. You bargained badly for a man in love. His silver eyes burned. 33, and I carry you whether you approve or not. Agreed. Ivy descended into the cellar. Water poured through cracks around the old drain. She lit the upper fuse, then the lower. Flame ran blue along the dragonglass cord. The lower flame died in spray. Ivy dropped to her knees and shielded it with both hands. She struck her flint once. Twice. Above, Calder counted. 28. The flint slipped. 30. Ivy caught it, struck again, and the lower fuse burned. The floor lurched. Calder came through the doorway at 33. He lifted her against his chest and jumped as the cellar wall exploded behind them. His good wing opened. The damaged wing tore free of part of its brace, spreading just enough to turn a deadly fall into a brutal slide through wet grass. They hit the orchard as the farmhouse collapsed. The oldest pear tree vanished into white water. Then the earth opened. The buried river took the flood. Black water roared beneath the orchard and out toward Salt Marsh. Vera's lower charges burst in sequence. The old gray levee split. Instead of striking North Village, the surge curved through Gold Meadow exactly where pear trees had stood. Ivy tried to rise. Her legs failed. Calder caught her, holding her upright as the valley disappeared. She watched roofs break loose. Fields folded beneath mud. Her farmhouse turned once in the current and was gone. The pain was too large for tears. I did this, she whispered. You saved them, Calder said. I destroyed it. Both truths can stand in the same room. Her own words returned without softening anything. Ivy gripped his coat and remained standing. Across the high road, thousands of people watched their valley drown. Joe lifted Lucy's grave marker. Vera raised her engineer's torch. Seraphine took down the final golden banner. One by one, the people of Gold Meadow raised whatever they carried, seed sacks, shovels, water cups, children. Not in celebration. In witness. The flood thundered into Salt Marsh. Far to the east, the kingdom's wells remained clear. Chapter 15. The judgment after victory 3 days later, rainwater and ember crown tested clean. 7 days later, white water ran below danger level. 10 days later, King Draven stood trial in the same great hall where Ivy had served him black wheat. No songs opened the proceedings. Farmers filled the feast tables. Nurses sat in the Lord's chairs. Children from St. Ara's occupied the musicians' gallery and dropped crumbs on General Mock below. Mock, washed but not emotionally recovered from the manure cart, flinched whenever a chicken clucked outside. Draven sat beneath the throne rather than on it. The Council of Provinces had suspended his sole authority. He would keep the crown until a lawful regency charter was completed, but every public order required 3 civil signatures. For a man who had confused himself with the kingdom, it was a punishment sharper than exile. Ivy testified first. She did not speak about betrayal. She spoke about black salt, poisoned wells, the gray dams, Gold Meadow, and every child treated at St. Ara's. Vera displayed the full military maps on the hall wall. Joe named the dead from Ash Run, including Lucy. Seraphine read Draven's orders to continue the victory tour after he knew the water was unsafe. Calder testified last. He wore no marshal's seal. I concealed the worst projection, he said. Whatever judgment is given to the king and command council should include me. The provincial judge looked at Ivy. As emergency commander, do you recommend imprisonment? The hall waited. Ivy thought of the slab on Calder's back, his public confession, the engineering corps surrendered into her hands, and his arms holding her while Gold Meadow drowned. She also thought of the missing report. No, she said. I recommend 5 years directing salt marsh containment without military rank or private land. He will live beside the consequence and report every measurement publicly. Calder bowed his head. Accepted. Draven stared at her. You spare him. I assign him work. You still believe anything short of a sword is mercy. And me? The judge read the council's sentence. Draven would surrender control of the army, fund water stations by selling 3 royal hunting estates, and spend each spring touring damaged farms without ceremony. He would hear claims in person. He could not pardon Pritch, Mock, or himself. Pritch received 10 years of supervised sanitation labor. On hearing this, he fainted backward into a tray of charcoal medicine. Mock was stripped of rank and assigned to clean treatment barrels under Joe Bell's supervision. I object, Joe said. Mock brightened. 10 years is too short. The judge made it 12. General Orsic received hard labor repairing every dam he falsified. Vera requested that his first work platform be fitted with the same upside-down safety harness. The judge, after a thoughtful pause, approved 1 instructional day. When the hall emptied, Draven asked Ivy to remain. Calder waited near the door. Ivy shook her head once. He left, though his reluctance almost had weight. Draven stood beside the pot of black wheat, now dry and dead beneath a glass cover. They will remember me as the king who poisoned spring, he said. They will remember what you do after. Is that what you told Calder? Calder did not ask how history would describe him. He asked where to report for work. Pain crossed Draven's face. I did love you. I know. Then why was it not enough? Ivy considered the man he had been and the king he had chosen to become. Because love is not the same as listening. Because wanting me near you was never the same as wanting me free. Because when truth made you feel small, you punished the person carrying it. He looked toward the door Calder had used. And he is better? He did worse than listen. He told the truth when it cost him me. You have forgiven him. Not completely. Draven almost smiled. There is still time, then. Ivy felt no anger. Only a tired clarity. Not for you. She left him with the black wheat. Outside, Calder stood at the end of the corridor despite being told to go. Military obedience remains poor, Ivy said. I no longer have rank. Convenient. He searched her face. Are you all right? No. Good. She raised an eyebrow. I mean not good. Honest. You need not be all right because judgment happened. You are terrible at this. I have other qualities. Name one. He bent and kissed her in the palace corridor. It was slow, certain, and entirely visible to 3 judges, 6 farmers, Seraphine, Joe, Vera, and a passing priest carrying the practical baptism bowl. When Calder lifted his head, Ivy had forgotten the question. Joe applauded once. Adequate. Seraphine sighed. The staging is dreadful, but the leads are convincing. Vera handed Ivy a clean water report. Before this becomes less professional. Bristle, in boar form, walked past them toward the open courtyard. He did not interrupt. He was carrying Mock's mustache shield. Chapter 16. Old Boots for a New Life by late spring. Gold Meadow was a silver lake surrounded by warning stones. Pear blossoms floated for weeks along the new shore. Ivy collected some and pressed them into the first record book of the Royal Water and Soil House. She refused the word royal in practice, though the charter contained it to make Draven sign faster. The house belonged to farmers, physicians, engineers, village elders, and shifter clans together. Every water report was posted publicly. No military command could seal contamination findings. Every treatment had to be tested on a contained field and downstream well before use. Joe directed the National Seed Bank from a stone warehouse on high ground. She frightened clerks, comforted widows, and kept Lucy's marker beside her desk until the new cemetery was ready. Vera became chief civil engineer. Her first order removed hidden drains from every gray dam. Her second required generals to work 1 week beside builders before changing a design. Seraphine took charge of public warnings. Her posters were beautiful, blunt, and impossible to confuse with praise. One showed a golden cup pouring black water beneath the words, "If it looks wrong, say so before the king drinks it." Draven hated it. The public remembered it. Bristle lived nowhere and appeared everywhere. He still refused offered food, though onions continued disappearing from the water-house kitchen. He tested new springs, slept on the Red Marshal's cloak, and shifted into human form once a week to complain that chairs were an unnatural conspiracy. Calder reported to Saltmarsh each morning without rank. He wore plain black work clothes, kept his damaged wing in a lighter brace designed by Vera, and sent Ivy complete measurements even when they made his own plan look foolish. Trust returned not as a grand feeling, but as hundreds of facts that arrived when promised. One evening he found Ivy planting young pear trees on the high ridge above the drowned valley. "The soil is too thin here," he said. "My mother heard that often. Then I withdraw the objection. I fear hereditary stubbornness." Ivy sat back on her heels. Mud covered her green skirt. Wind had pulled chestnut strands from her braid. She was tired in the satisfying way, with work behind her rather than disaster ahead. Calder held out a long wooden case. Inside lay a new Iron Command bar engraved with the seals of every province and shifter clan. "What is this?" "Permanent civil authority over the engineering corps during water, crop, or medical emergencies. It cannot be withdrawn by one ruler." Ivy stared at him. "You gave me an army. Engineers. Armies break things. Engineers complain about how armies broke them. This is not a normal courtship gift. I have seen normal courtship. It involved a fountain and went badly." She closed the case. "I have something for you too." From beneath the pear saplings, she drew a pair of old brown leather boots. They had belonged to her father. Vera had reinforced the left one to support Calder's uneven balance when his wing brace grew painful. "They are ugly," Calder said. "They are excellent in mud. I love them. You have not tried them. I am learning to trust experts." He pulled them on. "They fit." Then he knelt in the dirt before her. Ivy's heart stumbled. "Calder, this is not a proposal." "Oh, you sound disappointed." "I sound muddy." He smiled and took her hands. "I will not ask you to bind your life to mine while my 5 years at Saltmarsh have barely begun. I am asking whether I may build beside you. No crown, no command, no promise that pain becomes noble because we survived it. Only work, truth, and whatever joy we can make without lying about the cost." Ivy looked at the drowned valley, the new trees, and the extraordinarily handsome man kneeling in her father's ugly boots. "You may," she said. "On probation." "How long?" 5 years seems fashionable." "Cruel woman." "Correct woman." He rose and drew her close. "Both truths can stand in the same room." "You have overused that sentence." "I had a good teacher." He kissed her beneath the first new pear tree. His hand rested at the small of her back. Her fingers curled into his black hair. His good wing opened against the evening wind, sheltering them without hiding the lake. From the tool shed came a soft wooden knock. Bristle stood inside in boar form. He looked at them, looked at the open door, and used one hoof to swing it shut between them and the workers beyond. Then he stole an onion from the shelf and left through the back. Ivy laughed against Calder's mouth. Below them, clean water moved through a country that had finally learned victory was not the end of responsibility. Above it, pear leaves opened. Follow Moonlit Romance Library for more brave women, dangerous devotion, and justice beneath the moon.